It started right from the jump when we stepped out of that shop. In the in the very beginning, there was no doubt to me, and it's very hard to describe this unless one has been through paranormal high strangeness. We stepped into the twilight zone. It was the twilight zone, and that's something I figured out. It's very hard to describe unless you've experienced it.
Well, I hate to say it, a lot of people have, but they just don't want to talk about it.
Right. That's why we're so grateful to you.
But because our time is almost up, what happened after this in your lives? Is it still going on? I mean, are you still seeing, shape-shifting ghosts, aliens and stuff like that? Or has it been going on since then?
We've had lots and lots of experiences. I hate sounding like, trying to exaggerate any of this. I so wish I wasn't saying these things. But let me mention, with this little bit of time we have left, Valentine's Day, just this Valentine's Day, was our 29th anniversary of what I say is always of being arranged, and we consider it an anniversary. And on that night, we're only talking, a couple weeks ago, we experienced what I feel personally was probably my scariest of all the things that have happened to us, and we've had a lot. Because in the past, everything that seems to have happened to us has happened to us. On this night, on Valentine's Day, Chad and I were separated. And Chad has, with the little time we have left, I work in the French Quarter again. We've moved back to the New Orleans area. We live a pretty good drive out of New Orleans, out of the French Quarter. So Chad's become my super Uber driver. He drives me in, he drops me off at the shop, and makes it very easy for me. And so Valentine's night, I'm done in the shop at 9 o'clock. I call him. He answers me. He answers the call right away, and he says, I'm just around the corner. But he sounds stern. He sounds like something's wrong, and it's not Chad's sweet little voice. I remember saying immediately, are you all right? He repeated the words to me in a stern voice, and then he hangs up. Well, speed that story up. It took him an hour to get to me. Now, we're talking about he was literally just around the corner. It wouldn't have taken him a minute. It took him an hour. And Chad, if you'll share, little time we have.
It was again. I was just, half a block, just around the corner, and like Alta was saying, and I remember pulling out. I go around, and I guess I kind of jumped the gun a little bit. She wasn't quite ready. And I go around, and she wasn't out front, so...
But I don't see that possible. So he and I are not in agreement on that, because that just does not sound possible to me, that I was not there. So to me, high strangeness starts right there.
And I remember making the block, and then all of a sudden, I am on the other part of the city. I am
He's miles away.
I'm 3 or 4 miles away, down in mid-city. And I remember Alta calling me again, and she's like, where are you? And I'm like...
Oh, no, we're in panic.
I'm just panicking. I'm like, how did I get here?
He's sounding so calm. I'm calling him constantly, and he's answering every call, but backing up because he has no memory of this. Probably the second call, I believe it was the second, no longer than the third call, and I made a lot of calls in that hour. I heard a whisper, what I thought sounded like a whisper, come across that phone, as if something was in the car with him. And I knew he was in the car and driving because I could hear the blinkers. But Chad's voice was an extremely controlled panic, if that makes any sense at all. And every time I'm calling him, he's answering those calls. But there were 2 or 3 times that it went absolutely dead, where I could hear him, but he could not hear me. But there was at one point, every time I'm calling him, because at this point now I'm starting to, again, I'm in a controlled panic, because I'm just losing kind of my mind. It's Valentine's night. What the hey? So anyhow, in my kind of state of panic, I keep asking him in a very stern, like, this is no time for games, but I know this isn't a game. Where are you? Where are you? And he is never answering me. He couldn't. Now, he seemed to be able to.
Yeah, it was like I was just so.
He just kept saying something weird in a very frightened voice. It's happening. Yeah. And I'm like, what? What?
I was just so.
This was Valentine.
Confused and panicked and didn't understand how I can make a block, just go around the block and then end up, 3 or 4 miles away. It just did not make any sense.
He also was on a major thoroughfare called Canal Street. That's several lanes. It's always busy. We're talking Valentine's night, New Orleans. Chad, when he picked me up, when he got to me an hour later, he says to me that my word, I don't remember exactly how he said it because we're just so freaked out. He says, basically, he woke up turning around on Canal Street. I'm like, oh my God, Canal Street? He says that as he's turning around in the intersection, realizing where he's at, knowing he's got to get back to me, he says he hits every red light, like something made him stop. Every red light. Again, just more of the high strangeness.
No traffic.
Yeah,
there was no traffic.
And no traffic.
It was, and again, this was, 9 o'clock at night, so it wasn't like, it was very strange.
Sounds
that
almost
was has been our latest.
We don't normally live in this kind of fear. It's not like it may be sounding, but in all honesty, because you've been kind enough to ask, to me that's been my most frightening. Because I heard the fear in his voice over that phone.
It almost
sounds. The idea that he could be driving a car.
It almost sounds like he was in a trance.
Right.
Yeah.
That's certainly how it sounded to me.
Yeah.
But something controlling that car. And again, he's saying no traffic. I work with a little girl that oftentimes takes the streetcar in that direction on Canal. She lives in that direction. I asked her, because she left the shop. Well, she left before I did, which was crazy. I should have been left way before her. But I'm still waiting on Chad. And I asked her, I contacted her as soon as I could, and I asked her, anything weird? Or I didn't even go there. I just basically asked her about the traffic on Canal, how was it, Valentine's, what have you. She made it very clear to me, all normal, just everything's normal. And I'm like, well, it sure in the hay wasn't for us.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But hey, our time is winding down. How can they find your book? How can they find, if you have a website, how can they find it? Why don't you tell the listeners where they can find it? And you know what? We didn't even touch base with about Dr. Roger Lear, implants, x-rays, all this stuff.
Right.
I mean, we're going to have to get you on the show where we can actually touch base and all that stuff, because I think your lives are really, astoundingly, I think something is going on with your guys' life that more than anybody I've ever talked to, so I'd like to get into that stuff and maybe have you on here in a few weeks. But how can they find you guys on the internet?
Well, you can find us on Facebook or Abducted in the French Quarter. You can always make your purchase there. We also sell on Etsy. Now, if you're local or touring or coming through the French Quarter, you can go to Earth Odyssey, where Alta works, and they sell the book for us. And another place is called the Happy Hookah, which is kind of a little hookah shop around the corner in the French Quarter. But you can also go there and purchase our book if you're in the French Quarter.
Right.
But mainly, again, we're just kind of self-promoting. We're not on Amazon or anything like that. It's just Etsy and or through our Facebook page at the moment.
And we're interested in anybody who's seriously interested in asking questions or
would
like to share with us. That's always been our objective.
Yeah, we just like to let people know that if they are having weird things, that, they're not alone.
And we're out here.
Well, you guys really sound like you guys were abducted. One of my hosts, the Paranormal Lawyer, which is on Saturday nights on my network, he had a case where they were out looking at Mount Adams. Some weird things happened when they were out there. One is that they saw a UFO stop, and then it shot out like some laser lights, and then it moved on. Kind of strange. One of the guy's car became magnetized like you wouldn't believe. And then,
wow.
And then, Michael has to use a sleep path machine to sleep at night. And all of a sudden it stopped, like an hour into it. And he was sharing a trailer with another person. And, he said, hey, I'll swap batteries. Okay. Cause it showed his battery was dead or something. So he swapped batteries, and then Michael went out. They had a little makeshift porta potty, outside the trailer. So he went out there just to go for a minute. Well, when he got back in the morning, they realized because the time the machine was off and restarted, his little trip outside to urinate was like over an hour. Lost time. But weird things started happening, like he had triangle dots on his wrists in the morning, which wasn't there. He wore steel boots. It was all of a sudden the left side boot, the same with the side of the arm with the the weird things. It became magnetized. At one point after that, you could put a compass by his wrist, and it was spinning crazy. So my feeling, he was abducted, and because it's time lost. And I mean, things like that can happen to people, and a lot of people don't realize it, or they realize it, but they don't want to think about it.
Absolutely.
Right.
We understood that in the beginning.
Right. That's how we were when we had the UFO that first. If we would have never had any other experiences, we would have probably never spoke about the UFO thing. But when we started having other things happen to us, and, we didn't start out to do radio shows or write a book or anything like that. We were just trying to look for other, other people to talk to, whether they were professional or experiencers.
I had a tiny pyramid. I realized we're out of time. I'll just adding again to all of this. When you were talking about these triangle dots, I went through a long period of time. We took pictures every day of that. Every day I'd wake up, I'd have tic-tac-toe kind of stuff all over my body, all over my legs. These dots, very specific. Well, that was bizarre enough. But then one morning, a Sunday morning, we're sitting out in our backyard. Chad's sitting in the chair having coffee. It's a beautiful Sunday morning. I'm standing in the threshold of French doors that are opened up, and all of a sudden, something hurt the top of my foot so bad. I screamed, and I say often, I screamed like a girl, so loud. Chad came flying out of the chair, the coffee's flying, and I don't do that. And what happened was we looked down, and I'm expecting all kinds of blood and whatever because it hurt that bad. Something excised a tiny pyramid shape of flesh out of the top of my foot.
Oh.
Now, I guarantee you I felt that pain, and Chad experienced it with me, but there was no redness, not a drop of blood. But we had a Polaroid sitting close by at that time, one of the old school one-step jobbies. I told Chad, get a picture. We took a picture of that instantly, and there's that pyramid excised out of my foot. That's just mean. Let me say that to you. That's just straight up mean. But that was done in broad daylight for our benefit. And that's just mean. I don't care I don't know what else to call that. And that's not possible. How you can lose flesh and not bleed and no redness.
Yeah, you simply can't. Hey, our time is up. Like I said, I'll contact you and get you back on because we want to hear part 2 and part 3 of the story. And, I think the listeners would like to. But hey, Chad and Alta, I want to thank you for coming on Night Dreams Talk Radio. I enjoyed our conversation.
Well, I again, we thank you so much.
Mhm.
Thank you for